welcome to Who Corner to Corner podcast. As always, my name is Jeff, and as always, I'm joined by my good friend and my co-host, Paul.
Yeah, that's me. Hello, everybody.
How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm very good, mate. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, all good. Are you good? Are you well? You're looking well?
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, I'm all right today.
Good,
yeah.
Excellent. Now that's established, let's look at our guest.
Yes, so we're not alone today. We're
we are
joined
not.
by Dave Chapman from Cubicle 7 Games. Good morning to you, Dave.
Hi there. It's great to be here.
Thank you for
Dave.
joining us.
That's an impressive array of books behind you.
Yes, it is.
Look at that.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
I know everybody says it as like, oh, you've got a really cool office, and this is just my living room, so that's fine.
So for anyone who's not watching this on YouTube and is just listening to us talking, behind him, Dave's got some Doctor Who books, a TARDIS, some X-Files stuff, I think.
Yeah, there's all sorts there.
Book,
Look at that.
all sorts of stuff, yeah.
That's really impressive.
Could keep you occupied for ages looking at all that stuff. It's a bit like Paul's shelves there, which change depending on what we're talking about, don't they?
They do. They often change, yeah. But this is actually also my home office, so I don't really change much of what's going on behind me either. People either, they either take me or leave me on the basis of whatever's going on behind me. Yeah. That's what I say.
So, Dave, we'll get straight into things, and you can tell our listeners a bit more about you and what you do and everything at Cubicle 7. So we're going to start by asking you, who are Cubicle 7 and what do you do there?
Straight in there, look at that.
That's a tricky one to start off with straight away. Cubicle 7 are a game publishing company. We kind of produce and publish tabletop role-playing games, card games, dice games, things like that. We do things like Soulbound, which is the Warhammer Age of Sigmar. We do Warhammer 40k, Wrath and Glory, Imperium Maledictum, Warhammer Fantasy role-playing, Victoriana, and of course the Doctor Who role-playing game and its 5th edition spin-off Doctors and Daleks.
Ooh.
But yeah, the company was formed in about 2006, and it's all pretty good. It's kind of grown since I've been there. I mean, it's kind of started off with a couple of people in a back room somewhere, and now it's got offices with about 30 to 50 employees now.
Oh wow, that's pretty good. Were you there from the start then, Dave?
Oh, no, there's a very long story if there was. But yeah, almost the start, not quite.
Almost, yeah.
But I've been freelance sort of since then, and I went full time about 2 years ago.
Right, okay. Yeah. So is that your background then? You've been a game designer for quite a while as a freelancer?
Yeah. But the day job was retail, but I came home and designed games in the evening just to keep sane.
And I see that's great. You've managed to then turn that into your full-time job, and So, Dave, have you always been a Doctor Who fan? And if so, how did you get into it?
Right. Oh, I've heard you on the podcast, and I've heard this is always the tricky question, from what I can tell.
Yeah.
Ninja questioning style. That's what that is.
Yeah. I mean, I have memories of my mum was a big John Pertwee fan from his other things. So I always remember her making me watch episodes of that just because she quite liked the faces he pulled. And I have a very distinct memory of watching Invasion of the Dinosaurs, which is going back quite a bit. I kind of stopped watching with Tom Baker, which is ridiculous, really, but because a lot of people say, "Oh, he's my favourite," but I stopped watching him as a kid because it was just too darn scary. I couldn't.
Big scary eyes.
All of it was just freaked me out. It was just too dark. I guess it's probably because it was like the Hinchcliffe Holmes sort of era. It was when it was doing its really dark gothic stuff, and I'm like, no. Too scary for me, and I went back into watching it as Tom regenerated, and then stuck with it from there. I think I kind of fell out of watching it sort of the middle of Collins' era, but then got back just in time for the cool Sylvan Ace
Yeah.
era. And yeah, got stuck with it from there. I had a friend of mine, John, who also writes for the RPG, sort of freelance, who I've known since I was about 5, and he's a massive fan. I have distinct memories of us having like free periods in sixth form and going round to his place to watch like Tomb of the Cybermen on BBC VHS release,
Yeah.
because he was overexcited because it had just come out and things like that. So yeah. I've watched quite thoroughly from those ones.
Yeah. I think that gives you a fan card to wave around quite happily. It's funny. I remember that Tomb of the Cybermen VHS when it came out as well. It was because for me it seemed to come out of nowhere. It was like there was no warning. It was just suddenly available, and it was in Doctor Who magazine, and it was available in the shops, and it was like it had all been found, and it was here on VHS, and so we could rush out and buy it. And this story, which we thought had this sort of legendary, almost mythical, lost status. It was like uncovering the Ark of the Covenant or something like that, and we could get it home and load it up. And I was actually quite impressed with it. I liked it because I hadn't actually enjoyed the book that much. I couldn't see what all the fuss was about. But then watching it on TV, it's much more creepy and kind of unsettling and actually funny and warm as well, because Troughton's Doctor was brilliant in that. It's one of the best Second Doctor stories, I think, for seeing what the Doctor was like in those days. Sorry, that's me just going on a bit of a rant. You triggered that by mentioning the Tomb of the Cybermen VHS. So I will stop and return to you. So you've been a Doctor Who fan for a while, and obviously X-Files and Buffy, you were saying, Ghostbusters. Are you really sort of into the whole kind of fancy sci-fi and genre type stuff then?
Such a nerd, you wouldn't believe. Yes.
Brilliant. That's what we like.
And it's well, my next question was going to be, how did the Doctor Who RPG come about? And we'll come to that in a second. But Paul and I have both read the book and been through it, and we'll tell you a bit later. We played our first game of it earlier this week, which is going to be next week's podcast. And it was great fun, but it was apparent from the book that there was a real love for the show and an understanding of it as well. And it was very, like I said, it was. The rules and things are actually quite a sort of small and simple part, but there's a lot of, well, not necessarily simple per se, but there's a lot of, kind of examples and things in it, and it's quite an entertaining.
It is, and it's not
it's
not just like copy and paste from standard Doctor Who paragraphs that you read all over the place. It's it's like Jeff said, it seems to be written with from a perspective that understands the show and the heart and the soul of the show,
and a real love for it as well. And we were really impressed by that. And because sometimes you see, something of a book or a game or whatever for something that you like, and the people who've made it are not necessarily as into it as you might be. So talking to you now and hearing your love for the show and also the other things that you like as well. I love Buffy as well, and so you're one of us, really.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely in the geek crowd there. That's great.
Yeah. So how did the Doctor Who RPG come about, and in terms of how did Cubicle 7 kind of get it, and then your involvement on it, and so what was the story there?
It's a very strange one, but when the Conspiracy X game that I was working on before for Eden Studios, I worked on the second edition of that one, sort of converting it from one game system to another to sort of to make it into their house style, and I had this email come to me from Chris Birch, who is currently head of Modiphius Games, but back then he was running a company called Joystick Junkies, which did T-shirts which were themed on arcade things, and he was just getting into the RPG game making market, and he dropped me an email and just said, "Oh yeah, I really enjoyed Conspiracy X," and we started chatting, and we were discussing how to get more people playing tabletop RPGs, because this was like mid-2000s. It was before Stranger Things and things like that were making it popular again. And we were trying to think of ways to get more kids interested in it and a new audience. And we were talking about how we could tie in with a license, a big property, something like James Bond and stuff like that, that would possibly entice a new audience. And it was just after the end of Series 1, the Eccleston one. And that was just blew me away. And we were discussing saying, oh yeah, Doctor Who would be a great one because the kids love it as well. And I was working in a big bookstore at the time which had a life-size Dalek, and seeing that transition of kids coming in asking their parents what's that to them, oh suddenly god, it's a Dalek. That was just great. So I thought oh, this would be a great way to get kids and the new generation of gamers involved, is to do with something Doctor Who related. Chris Birch had worked with BBC licensing in the past, and the next thing I knew, I was in a pub in the middle of London talking to Chris and being introduced to Dominic McDowell and Angus Abranson, who'd just formed Cubicle 7 Games. They'd put out a couple of little things in the past, but nothing really big. And we thought, oh yeah, we'll go for it. See how it goes. And we put together a pitch, which we had printed up properly. It was like a 36-page example of what we thought we could do, which was basically the first chapter. And we sent it off to the BBC, expecting nothing.
Was this post?
Post
or email
sent.
Sent?
Post.
I do still have it up there somewhere on the shelf.
Oh wow!
Hang on. This is one for the viewers rather than the listeners. There we go.
Dave reaches to his top shelf, risking life and limb to bend backwards to get it. There it is. Look at that.
This is the pitch we sent to the BBC. Which was just sort of a mock-up put together of what we were aiming for. Just to prove
that's quite lavish, though, isn't
basically it? That we knew what we were doing. So we sent that off to the BBC, expected nothing. And then the next thing we knew, we were being called into BBC Worldwide in London. We all went down in suits and I remember Dom saying to me, "We don't stand a chance. We'll go in. This will be a great learning experience." So we went in expecting nothing of it, and we were showing off. I think I had the Buffy RPG with me to show off what the books could look like. And I think I had the old Xena and Hercules RPG that was done by West End Games as well. I had that with me to show off how box sets work with the dice and things. And next thing we knew, it was the paperwork, and we were like, oh my god! So yeah,
I was going to say it must have been great in one respect, but also quite scary suddenly because you're quite a small crew. Yeah. Yes, you know what you're doing, but presumably limited cash, limited resources, and suddenly you've got this contract to fulfill and go out there and do it.
Yeah, it was quite a shock, and it all kind of escalated from there. I didn't get involved too much with the business side of things. Dom and Angus basically just said, "Go and write it then." Go create.
Yeah, you focus on that.
Game. And there was me just sitting there creating that for about 3 months and sending text off and getting it play tested. And
fantastic.
So, forgive me, but I kind of knew what RPG stuff was,
and I thought I did.
Yeah, so we've played, Final Fantasy and stuff like that, which is obviously quite different.
Well, you played it. I've never played Final Fantasy actually.
Yeah, I used to be well into stuff like that, and Chrono Trigger, and Secret of Mana. Those old kind of Square Enix games and stuff like that. But I didn't realise that the tabletop RPG world was so big. You mentioned Xena there, and X-Files, and Buffy, and things like that. I didn't know, and it's funny really when you're not. I mean, understandably, when you're not in that world, it's things pass you by. So Paul and we've talked about like Target novels, Doctor Who ones and stuff. And I was watching the show when Sylvester was the Doctor and stuff. But then it ended and things, and then I kind of came back into it with Paul McGann. I had no idea about target novels
Virgin
and all
New
that kind of stuff,
Adventures
and
and
this whole thing just kind of passed me by. And today it's easier in some ways to be aware of things like that when we're all so connected, and you got online and stuff like that, and now hearing about a Buffy RPG,
you're
it's
thinking
kind
you're
of
going to have
thinking,
to have that. Jeff
Yeah,
is
yeah,
a
I'd
massive
yeah.
Buffy fan, big
Yeah, I
time.
love Buffy. I'd love to have had a go on that, And so, was the Doctor Who RPG? Because my awareness of it has only kind of come about since like the 12th Doctor version. But you showed that one there with Ten and Martha. So how far back does it go? And when did it first sort
The
of come
first
out,
one
as it
Cubicle
were?
7 did was definitely David Tennant. I think it was about 2007. I think
Yeah.
was the first edition of ours. There were two
Okay.
RPGs before that for Doctor Who
Right.
back in the 80s. A company called Vassar did one with Tom on the front, which is up here.
He's got that as well.
Oh
Look at
dear.
that. Careful. You're making me nervous. Reaching back like that.
So that's the original Tom Baker
Oh, look at
one.
that. Yeah, the old neon logo.
Is that
It is signed.
is that signed as well?
Wow.
Signed
Very
by Tom.
nice.
Fantastic.
My
Fantastic.
Look at that.
most recent day job before quitting, I worked in a shop called the Television and Movie Store, which was part of Sci-Fi Collector, the Stamp Centre.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
we had loads of the actors from Doctor Who come and do signings for us, and they were all fantastic. Tom especially, he was lovely.
Yeah.
But yes, the Vassar did one in the 80s, and then sort of a bit later than that, there was one called Time Lords that came out that was done by Virgin Books, back when Virgin were doing all the novels.
Okay. Yeah.
But that was just a little paperback book type thing. But yeah, we started with the David Tennant one, which I think was about series 3. I think that one came out.
Right. Yeah.
And then
Martha,
the second version of that was we did a Matt Smith 11th Doctor edition, and then it's kind of evolved constantly as the Doctors have gone on. I do have very, very fond memories of doing the 11th Doctor one, because we had the opportunity to read the series 5 scripts before the episodes had aired.
Did you? That's privileged, isn't
it? There was me and Dom from the boss. We went down to the BBC television centre in London, and they had all the scripts in a room, guarded, locked, and we could read and make notes, but we weren't allowed to take pictures or anything like that. But that was great. That was great.
Oh, that's fantastic, isn't it? So just going back to your Tom Baker signed RPG there, were you able to exercise the demons of Scary Tom from when you were small and terrified of the pyramids of Mars?
Yeah, I've watched them all now, but yes, I think it was the Master that did it for me in Tom's era.
Oh, old Crispy.
Just scared the
Yeah.
crap out of me.
The ridges,
all fine now.
See.
So as we're chatting, we've got some more questions to come to in a minute, but I'm thinking that maybe some of our listeners and watchers may not be fully aware of kind of what an RPG is. And Paul and I, I've had the book for ages. And I've kind of looked through it at times.
We've always said we should get behind it and give it a go, shouldn't we?
We'll do it. But it looked a bit daunting.
It did. I'm not going to
lie. And then so we kind of put off doing
but then,
it.
Sorry, Jeff. It's the daunting aspect is not just solely the Doctor Who RPG. I think it's the world of role playing games in general. It looks coming from the outside. It just looks so involved and intense, and like I don't know how to describe it. It's not quite like a club, because obviously it's open to anybody, but it's almost like the sheer wall of trying to understand the rules, you think from the outside is just immense, but actually It isn't, is it? That's the thing.
It's not. No.
Sorry,
So,
thanks.
so we say, yeah. Well, we sat. You're right, Paul. We sat down to play it, and we thought, okay, because part of it is developing a character, isn't it? And playing multiple
I did
games
that.
over
I did my
months or
character.
years. Yeah. Paul came up with a brilliant character.
Did it? But since my daughter said to me, she said, "Do a mind map." So I did a mind map of who my character was going to be, and just scribbled loads of stuff down.
Yeah.
And then I found a character sheet, and that kind of allowed me just to focus a few things on. So I really enjoyed that part actually, and it didn't take long. Actually, it took me like 30 minutes to do that.
Yeah, and I developed a story, and gave them Paul and Graham were playing, and Graham was the Doctor, and Paul was his character, and apparently genuinely surprised them with the cliffhanger ending.
You did, mate. You did
and,
well.
It was great fun, coming up with it, and but the biggest takeaway, well, a couple really, I guess, it was great fun doing it. But it wasn't anywhere near as kind of intimidating
not at all.
as I thought. You could get really quite deep into it all, couldn't you? With the different skills and all of that kind of thing. But that can come in time.
Yeah, because we didn't really touch too much on that, did we? I think we did probably like level 1 kind of. You know.
But there was a good intro, and so I suppose what I'm saying is for anyone who's listening and has been interested. Go for it, because it's not as daunting and as scary as as you think. And also, I think part of it is you can. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, but you can make it as in depth and involved as you want to an extent, can't you? It's like I said to Paul and Graham, I quite like the Funkoverse games that you might know of, and that has the kind of setup that you can follow the rules completely or slightly simplify them. And I play with a friend of mine quite regularly, and we've been doing it for ages. And then we realised actually we've been doing this whole bit here wrong. And we said at one point we were like, maybe we'll enter a tournament. We think we're quite good at this. Then we discovered that we'd got all this bit wrong. And we were like, good job we didn't go in. We'd have been annihilated straight away. But I've played it with my son who's 8, and I've made it a lot simpler for for him to play rather than kind of fully getting into it, and so I think it was the same with the RPG here, and it was just great fun, wasn't it? And a real chance to kind of be creative and immerse yourself into something that you love, and a world that you're a big fan of. So how do you go about designing a game like this? Because there are rules and structure to it and stuff, but a huge amount of it is down to the players, isn't it?
I guess the trickiest thing is trying to keep keeping.
This is Freya, my daughter, Doctor Who fan. Also, she just activated the printer right next to me. So apologies, Dave. You crack on.
I thought I heard.
I think the trickiest bit is keeping the feel of the series, and trying to keep it reflect the tone and the things you see on screen. Because Doctor Who's it can go anywhere, do anything at any time. It has to be big enough and flexible enough to accommodate different time periods and different types of adventures. But I think the tricky thing is going to be just making sure that while you're actually playing, there are some sort of devices that make it feel like you're in the series. Going back to the Buffy one, which was a big inspiration to it, the way that the Buffy RPG worked was that you had to the vampires couldn't be staked until you depleted their hit points enough, which encouraged you to have like fist fights and do the whole cool martial arts and stuff.
Yeah.
And then when they were beaten enough, then you could stake them. And while that's a fairly simple mechanic, just while you're actually playing it, it makes it feel more and more like the series, because you're having to do the fights and not just walking around like Van Helsing and stabbing them.
That'd be too easy then, wouldn't it, really?
Yeah. Well, I put something in our game that there was some padlocked drawers, and I think I said up front they're deadlocks. You can't open them with the Sonic, because otherwise, you're going to break this story open,
The sort of does
really
make things a little
quickly.
bit too easy sometimes. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So we've got a question here from Max Blake on Twitter, and he asks, "What aspect of the game are you most proud of?"
Oh crikey! I think that's probably going to be the initiative system, because most tabletop RPGs, they you roll your initiative, you go in a random order, and you basically take turns in hitting each other. And Doctor Who's not really about hitting each other or shooting at each other, and the initiative system is designed so that the people who talk go first, and then the people who are moving go next. People who are doing something go next, and then last are the people who are fighting. So whenever you're in a confrontation with the bad guys, you always have the opportunity to talk your way out of it, and try and defuse the situation.
Yeah.
Or you can try and run away, because there's a lot of running in Doctor Who, especially classic. The old third episode, run down corridors continually.
Yeah.
And then there's the doing things, like you can use science or gadgets and things like that to try and foil the situation. And then, if all else fails, the people who want to shoot at things, usually unit, can do their bit at the end. So, yeah.
I suppose it is a challenge to make a game like this, isn't it? Because you can't use the sort of standard. It's a bit like making Doctor Who video games. There's no fighting, there's no shooting, and so it intrinsically makes it different, doesn't it? And just listening to you there, I suppose there's probably other types of games like Buffy where you'd have a
like
fighting
Warhammer, perhaps
mechanism.
something like that, where it's all about combat, isn't it? And strength and different character attributes that are all around the. To give you an advantage in a conflict and fight.
And the Who game is much more, sort of strategy based in a way, isn't it? And sort of personality traits and things like that. I think. Yeah, it was really good. So, how does the fan gene for Doctor Who work in creating the game?
That's a weird question, Jeff.
Well, it's like I was saying earlier. Sometimes you stuff's. This could have been written by a non-fan. So I think inherently.
Does it give you a different look on things? Do you think? Is that what you mean? That sort of stuff.
Yeah, and I said earlier, there's a clear love for the show within the book and everything about it. So I suppose the question is, was there anything that you as a fan wanted to be able to put into the game, and any kind of ideas and story elements and things like that?
It's really just the love of the series kind of has to sort of come into the game's rules to make it feel like you're actually playing the thing. But then once the basics of that's there, and that the rules actually reflect what you see on screen, like putting the conversation and the science before fighting. Once you start with that, it kind of controls itself, and it can go off in its own little directions. And we've had a load of freelancers work on it over time, submitting adventures, and every time I see the adventures come in, that you can just feel the love of the series coming through. The first adventure that we did was one called Arrow Down, which was a seaside town that had been it was Autons, and they were taking over like the waxwork museum and all the universal monsters coming out.
Oh, that sounds cool.
That was just a great laugh. And the starter set that we produced recently, there's a writer called Eleanor Hingley who we've got on board at the moment. And when I first read through the adventures that she'd submitted, I was completely blown away by just how much she managed to capture the feel of the series with it. And I think finding the right writers who have a love for it really helps as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that I can imagine. Yeah. So, uh, what difficulties do you have in making a
I
game
think
like
that
this?
the hardest thing when it came to the Doctor Who game was actually the combat,
Mm.
because when you're
Ah,
watching it
yeah.
on TV, the Daleks or the Sidemen, they're just like, and you're dead, and that's not a good game. It's great for TV,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
if a Dalek can shoot,
It's got to be
yeah,
more
if a
to
Dalek
it.
can shoot you and you're dead instantly,
Mm.
there's got to
Yeah.
be that's it's really dangerous. And there's plenty of sideline characters who get exterminated in the
Yeah.
series, but not really your main cast. So I think that the trickiest bit was trying to make sure that the guns were lethal in it, but
Mm.
that you have a chance to avoid getting shot, and that's kind of where
Yeah,
the story
yeah.
points kind of came in, and that the story points also balanced out the other big difficulty, which was having one character who is super intelligent and can
Yeah.
regenerate and do all these fantastic things, and making sure that the players of the characters who aren't super intelligent or the companions
Yeah.
don't feel like they're sidelined. So they get more story points so they can do the cool things, have their spotlight moments, be cool in the series. And it balances it out a little bit as well.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting hearing you say that, because as you're saying that, I'm kind of I'm running it against our session that we played the other night, and I can see how that kind of works. I mean, again, it was only our first effort at this, and we didn't really do story points so much, did we? But there was
No.
no sense, because I was playing a made up companion character, and there was no sense that I was anyway sort of sidelined. Actually, my character was quite happy to let the Doctor take the lead in most of it, but then come in and sort of just drop in a few stuff. And I had this gizmo, which was my phone, wasn't it? This is quite a good thing. So I had
Yeah.
this phone, which is essentially a bit like the Sonic. It can just connect anywhere, and it could be really good. But I'd built in the idea that the battery doesn't always work. So every time we wanted to use the phone, we had to throw the dice. And Jeff, being a complete git that he is, would say, "Yeah, you got to roll 157 million or something." Well, like 16.
I
But
made it get
you did, didn't
harder
you?
because
Yeah.
yeah, I was like, if they get this bit now,
The
then
story's
what I
finished.
want to happen.
It's
Yeah,
gone.
yeah, you. But there was also bits where I was like, yeah, I suppose you could do this now. It doesn't matter. It will still achieve the same end result whether it happens now or later. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it, of planning a story that had enough bones to it that they could then work in and around it and develop it while still hitting certain things to actually give it
Jeff, your story was on Dave. Jeff's story was genius, right? Because the idea was that the Doctor and the companion found themselves in an escape room. So not only did he create a Doctor Who story, he also created a virtual escape room to get out of. Brilliant
Yeah, that's
idea.
great.
I was genuinely impressed. I never knew you were capable of such lofty creativity.
neither did I.
So,
Neither did I.
But again, in a way though, getting the inspiration for that from the RPG and thinking I've got to make a story and I've got to make characters. I mean that for me was the most revelatory part of the game, I think. I mean, we're both creative guys anyway, aren't we? But just being given license to sort of just go with it within a franchise that we both love, and have the opportunity to kind of play it out. I'll be honest, I was quite cynical at the start of it, because I've literally never ever played an RPG, and Jeff had to really sort of shoehorn me into it. But once I started doing the mind map, I started looking forward to it, and once we actually started getting into it, I'm thinking, why wasn't I doing this like 30 years ago? This is so up my street. I enjoy a video game. I've been, sort of Skyrim and stuff like that, which are about as close to an RPG as I would get. And I love those, but actually playing it on just with a dice and pen and paper and a guide in a book is it's a different experience, and in many ways more rewarding, I would say. Just from the brief hour or so that we spent playing it, I think I could get hooked on it.
Yeah, same. It was just a lot of fun, and Paul, you've written Doctor Who's stories before.
Yeah,
and,
only for me though.
Yeah, but you can take that and use it in this, and
Yeah.
you develop your character there, and you got to think like them and react to things, and yeah, it was great fun. And also something that's really nice about it is it doesn't. You don't need to get loads of expensive stuff to be able to do it.
That's it.
You get the book whether you buy the physical or the PDF of it, and you can almost immediately
Just go into
get
it.
into it. Really, yeah. So, Dave, for you, is it exciting to hear people, when they play the game and make their own adventures? I know there's videos on YouTube of people playing, aren't there? And do you get that kind of feedback from people about how they've enjoyed the game and what they've done? And do you look for stuff like that to see how people are doing with
I
it?
don't actively go looking for it because I have such a fragile ego.
Don't we all?
Don't read the comments. So every time anything comes out, it's like, oh god, no, they're not going to like it. Oh god, what? But yeah, seeing the few ones that I have been amazing to see what people have managed to do with it, and even like the small adventures that we do for conventions or the one shots. The way the feedback we've had from some of them. It's amazing how doing the same adventure with different groups, it all goes completely differently every time. It's so completely different. So yeah, it's quite a unique thing, the way that the same adventure can come out in a completely different way with a different group. It's not the way you have a video game where it's like, oh, it's going to be the same every time I play it.
Yeah,
or they do try and build choices and different branching elements into the video game, don't they? Where you have different outcomes from different things, but they're always going to be limited by the hardware and everything that's in there. But
and when we're playing this, your options really are unlimited.
I think that's the big difference.
Yeah, a video game can't hope to.
Don't get me wrong, I love the video games. I do. I played recently. I was playing. Was it Cyberpunk 2077? Which I loved it. I thought it was. I just really enjoyed being in that world. But that world has been created for me. So from that respect, you sort of marvel at it, thinking the developers have done a cracking good job in getting the lighting right, the environment, the sense of being there. But of course, on a tabletop, you don't get that. But you do, because it's all in your head, right? And it's as real as, and you just very, very quickly are in that space, and it's extraordinary. I honestly, I never thought I would enjoy it as much, but I genuinely did.
He drew a diagram of the room.
I did.
As I was explaining it.
Oh yeah, I've got the diagram. So I like thinking. I generally think in quite visual terms. So if I can draw something, I can, just relate to it a little bit more. But that's probably a bit that I was kind of sort of not dreading, but was a little bit cynical of, perhaps. The fact it isn't kind of drawn out for me. I'm going to have to think of all this stuff myself, but. That's just me being weird, frankly.
You really went for it,
That's
didn't
what I
you?
do, mate.
And
if you're going to do it properly, that's what I say.
Yeah. So, Dave, what Doctor Who lore and canon are you able to cover?
That's lore with LORE law, is it? Or LAW? They're probably the same, actually. Within the lore of Doctor Who.
Yeah. Because the 13th Doctor, the second edition of the book, there's a source book as well, isn't there, which kind of covers her entire era, doesn't it?
It's changed over time. When we first started, we were only really able to tackle the revamp era from 2005 onwards, and then it got to about the second incarnation of it, and we were able to cover classic era as well, which was great. But basically it's everything that you see on screen. Although we were very surprised recently, because the 13th Doctor source book that came out recently, we've been able to cover the Doctor Who Redacted podcast.
Yes, I saw that was listed.
That's all canon as far as the 13th era is concerned. So yeah, it was great to be able to include that as well.
Yeah,
Hopefully we'll
that's
be
really
able to
good. Yeah.
expand into other territories, but yeah, you never know. It's all paperwork and negotiations. But
Always is,
Yes.
isn't it?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
creative process will do what it does, but it all comes down to the commercial stuff
yeah,
at
yeah,
the end with these sort
we'd
of
love
things.
to
But
be
Yeah.
able to tackle things like the Big Finish audios as well. If we can,
God, that would open it up a bit, wouldn't
that
it?
would be
Yeah.
a
Wow. Yeah.
crazily big amount of stuff to even
Yeah.
begin to tackle. But yes,
But they've got, loads of audio only
Mm.
companions that you'd be able to bring in, and characters and stuff like that. That would be really cool. So we got a couple of new releases recently, so maybe you can tell us a little bit about those. So there was the Stitch in Time book and the Doctors
oh
and
right,
Daleks one as
Yeah,
well,
I'm
which
looking
is
at that one
subtitled
now,
The
actually.
Alien
Yeah.
Archive.
Recently
Yeah.
redesigned cover. Obviously, all the branding
yes,
changed
yeah.
very quickly.
The artwork on
It's
everything is
superb.
fantastic, by the way.
Really
It's
good.
really good. Yeah. So yeah, tell us a bit
Yeah.
about Stitch in Time and
Stitch in
what
Time's
that one's for.
a 10-part adventure. Well, each part is like an episode of the TV series, so it's almost like playing a complete season, basically. And yeah,
Yeah. Because it's all broken into chapters with names like the most dangerous monster, and then there's Act 1,
yeah.
Act 2,
So
Act 3, isn't there?
each is
In
like
each
an
bit.
episode, and as you go through, there's some in strange places, some in alien worlds, some in the past, all what you kind of expect from a Doctor Who series. But at the end of each episode, you kind of come away with something. You're not entirely sure how relevant it is, but you end up with something. And then by the time you get to the 10th one, the final part of the season arc, you realise that
Yeah.
all these bits are very useful. They all come together for
Yeah.
It's at the
Yeah.
continuing elements, like the Target's own tour company and four missing Mary Mallard film
It
wheels. So
all ties together
we
to
we sh-
try
Man,
and
that
save
sounds brilliant.
a planet
Yeah.
called Nine. So hence the name. Thing Stitch in Time saves Nine.
See
so
it. Yeah.
right, yeah, very good.
Very clever,
So
that.
how do you develop something like that? Do you come up with the episode, synopses, or do people pitch them in? Because I know there was a few
Yeah.
other writers involved as well. So is it like the show? With
Writer's
everyone,
room kind of setup, is that?
Yeah, and
Yeah,
you're in
it's
charge. And,
that one in particular was a strange one because I really wanted to do a connecting season because there was a bit of a gap on TV, but the ones of COVID slowing everything down, and I knew that there wasn't going to be a season for a bit in between things. So I thought it'd be great if the players could have their own series that they could do, and I wanted to do one that had like a Bad Wolf style story arc, but a little bit more, even more connected. And I was chatting to a couple of the writers and said, this is what I want to do. And one of them said, oh yeah, I can come up with those. Came up with the story ideas for the episodes. They were just like a paragraph. And then it was basically a case of finding some writers and saying, how does this interest you? Can you develop this into a full episode length adventure? And then they submit it all, and we kind of make sure it all fits together. And so it was a bit of almost like a writer's room effort, that one.
Yeah.
I'm just looking through the book for it now. We should do this one, Paul. It looks great.
So you're just getting right into it now, aren't you?
Yeah.
To make up for the last 30 years of not playing role playing games, suddenly just cram them all in. Where my memory faculties aren't quite as good as what they used to be. But there you go. But actually, this is another thing I just want to say as well. Actually, the fact is, you could be any age, really, can't you? I mean, you're saying, Jeff, that Ethan's 8 years old. I'm in my things. So anything in between that, really. And I'm trying to convince Freya, who just popped in to get a print out an exam sheet. I'm trying to convince her to jump in and do this because I reckon she'd like it as well.
Yeah, I think she'd enjoy it. You're quite a good example.
What'd you call me? Hey, what'd you say?
You were reluctant, you're
I
reluctant
was,
to do
and
it, but
I feel
you
terrible
ended
for
up
that as
really
well.
enjoying
But
it. Yeah,
it's I don't
yeah.
know, just I mean, again, in the 80s, I knew not so much friends, but I knew people who people who played like Dungeons and Dragons as per the Stranger
Yeah.
Things, and I never I mean I'm a nerdy geek anyway, but I thought they were another level of nerdy geekism, that to which I wasn't really sort of included, and I never, and because I'm more of a sci-fi rather than a fantasy, a lot of the RPG games were more fantasy based, or at least it seemed to me, that was my sort of opinion of it, and I'd never really been into Warhammer, and I'm not. The closest I've ever got to Dungeons and Dragons, really, apart from watching it on Stranger Things, is actually watching the recent movie that was out, which again I really enjoyed. And I say to myself, "Well, I don't really like fantasy. I don't do dragons, mate. Witches and sorcery and all that bollocks, blah 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 blah." And yeah, I played Skyrim twice. Back, it took like almost 5 years of my life, but that's the thing.
But you
We're
don't
all full
like
of
fantasy.
conflicts and things, and we're all full of like really strange, walls. They're almost like prejudices in a way. I'm not going to play RPG. It's too complicated, or it's too geeky, or whatever. And it's like, well, just get rid of all that stuff. Just take it away and just give it a go. And if you love it, you love it. If you don't, you don't.
And if you don't, and it was great fun, and that's
really
the most important
genuinely
thing.
enjoyed it.
Really.
I was
The thing
surprised.
I would say is there's a couple of really positive things that have always come out of role playing games with me. Number one is I started playing when I was about 13, 14, and the gaming group that formed back then, I'm still friends with now, and I'm in my mid-50s, and we still game. Despite us all going to other sides of the planet, like some of us are in Australia, and
you can still do it.
We're still playing D&D now, and if anything happens to one of us, we're all there. We're like really really good close friends still, even after all this time. And the other thing was I got my first job because of D&D. It wasn't D&D related. The first job I applied for was working for what was then Humberside County Council's Nature Conservation Department, and working in their department, doing maps. And it wasn't really a map thing, because it's like, we can see you can do maps because you play D&D. But it would. I talked to the boss after I got the job, and he said, it was down to the last two people, and it was you and somebody else, and we gave you the job because you play D&D, because we know you can think your way out of problems and sort out. And
that's interesting, isn't it?
And so if ever you think D&D's not good for you,
put it on your CV. You never know, do you?
That's a great case study.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's a brilliant story.
So, what's the longest game that you've taken part in? Have you got a board set somewhere that
has been going on since 1977?
Well, that can be the question can be taken two ways. One can be the longest game session. We actually tried to break the record for it. And, when we were in our late teens, we decided we were going to do a charity marathon RPG, and we tried to do 90 hours non-stop in a church hall somewhere, trying to raise money for the church roof, which was ironic considering it was just when they were saying D&D was evil. But that I wouldn't recommend that. It's not healthy, and
I bet that started getting weirder as the hours
not
went
something
on.
you can do in your 50s either. I wouldn't have thought.
The pieces are moving.
They've lasted a while. I think the longest one we did recently was we did a great game of Tales from the Loop, which is a fantastic game as well.
Is that on the Amazon Prime series, where they're based on that guy's paintings?
The game's based on his paintings as well. So we did a game of that, which I think lasted about 3 years. The characters themselves got so grew up, because you start as teenagers, it's like pre-teens, and then there's another game that they produce called Things from the Flood, which covers the rules for when you're teenagers, and we evolved into that game, and then we didn't stop the apocalypse, so we started that evolved into another game system. Then we time traveled back to try and stop it all from happening. It was it was epic.
Brilliant.
See, that's how they can evolve, can't they? And how you can be really.
And suppose
creative
you don't plan that whole story out, do you? You kind of do it as it goes. It develops and evolves.
Naturally evolves. But...
Yeah. So, if what tips and advice would you give to someone who was looking to get into RPG games for the first time? I just said our role-playing games game.
Role-playing games games.
If you get a chance to go to a convention, that's always a great one because there's always places where you can drop in and have a go and see what you think. If you can't get to a convention and want to see what one looks like being played, then YouTube's your best bet. Critical Role is the obvious choice because for things like D&D, but there.
Yes, they've been at a lot of conventions like MCM and stuff, haven't they, over here?
A guy called Eric Campbell, who used to work for Geek and Sundry, where Critical Role's formed as well. He did a very long game, which didn't really have a title. It was kind of called Eric's TBD game because he didn't decide what it was going to be, but he thought we'll do a weekly campaign. We'll start with Doctor Who, and it went on for years, and it was that was great as well. Well worth a watch. And also you could try listening to. There's a podcast called Game of Rassilon as well, which I think they're on their fifth and final season at the moment, which is just an audio one where they've been playing through. And that's fantastic, and it gives you an idea of the scope of the stories that you can do, and it just kind of dips into the rules a little bit, so it's not too heavy. If you really just want to have a go, the starter set that we brought out last year is probably the best bet because it's got the basics of the rules and it's all quite trimmed down, and it's also got like 3 or 4 great introductory adventures which forms a group. The characters are all pre-generated for you. Nobody plays the Doctor, so there's no fighting over it. You're all trying to rescue the Doctor, and you're kind of scooped up by the TARDIS and sort of taken to places that can try and help. And by the end of like the 4th adventure in there, you've got your own time travel device and can go off and do your own thing. So it's and of course it comes with the dice and anything like that.
And by that point, you're really versed in it, aren't you? And steeped in the whole thing, and presumably want more and want to create your own thing now. And
So, do you have any idea of how many people play around the world? I imagine with a video game, X number of copies were sold, but it must be slightly different.
Trying to gauge.
Yeah, you sell a book, but 10 people could be playing.
All. It's strange.
But, but I guess it's doing well. It's still going, isn't it? And particularly with the 13th Doctor stuff here, there's multiple books coming out and expansions and stuff. So I assume it's all good and it's going to keep going.
13th year we've been doing it, and there's I'd say about 20 plus books available still for the first edition. This is the second edition with the one with Jodie on the front. Is even more simplified, which is probably perfect for new gamers. But it's still got the complexity for anybody who wants to make it a bit more gritty. But I obviously have no idea. Although when it comes to, I'm going off on a different tangent now.
Let's go for it.
Thinking of rule systems. If you want a bit more crunch and a bit more in detail to your rules and methods, then we brought out Doctors and Daleks, which is a separate line.
We've been
the Alien Archive just came out recently, which is like the monster manual for it. Doctors and Daleks uses the 5th edition rule system, which is completely different to the normal Doctor Who RPG. So it is compatible with other 5e games, Dungeons and Dragons, and you can cross over with your other 5e games. It is more complicated, but it does introduce some new bits to players who are familiar with Dungeons and Dragons, which is mostly the non-combat combat. Because D&D is basically you go into a room and hit it with a sword, and
hit it with a hammer.
so Dots and Daleks was a bit of a challenge to try and get the
like you were saying earlier with the system.
There's a really cool game system that we've developed in there, which allows you to actually deplete the enemy's hit points. They're kind of like a metaphorical thing. By outsmarting them, confusing them with logical gobbledygook, or just telling them that their plan's wrong, or destroying a gadget in a room or something like that. So and that's been very highly regarded when that came out, which is great because
that's fantastic, isn't it?
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
So what are you working on for the range now? You can blank out words and stuff. But is there more with the 13th Doctor? Is sort of
probably going to be 14th and 15th now, isn't it? I'd imagine.
Yeah, and any future stuff
for the regenerations now, isn't it? So the next thing we've got coming out is our 60th anniversary things, which will be a pair of books which covers the last 60 years, basically.
Oh wow!
So they're kind of almost like a slimmed down version of the Doctor source books, because there's 13 of those so far. So they've managed to get a book which covers the classic era and a book which covers the modern, and all the Doctors and as many companions as we can stat up and squeeze in there. And there's also an adventure that goes through every Doctor incarnation that joins up, including War Doctor and the Fugitive Doctor, and it all kind of ties together into one big adventure, which you can turn into a multi-Doctor, multi-part one.
That's kind of got me excited now. Literally, I'm such a noob, and yet I'm really excited by this.
I want to do that. And just looking through the Stitch in Time one there, we need to do that as well, Paul.
I tell you what, Dave. Honestly, you've opened my eyes completely. It's been great playing your game, and talking to you and hearing about just unpeeling the wrapper and just looking at the mechanics of how these things are made, and the love and the passion and creativity and the sheer scale of work that goes into it. I think is really extraordinary. And I think any fan worth their salt would applaud you and the team wholeheartedly. So I shall do that.
Honestly, it's brilliant, and we had a great time with it, and I think we definitely want to do more, and we'll put out our podcast of us playing it. Go out after you also have a listen to what you think. And,
That's some weird stuff in there, I'll tell you now.
Personally, I'm waiting for Russell T Davies to call me up and say, I like your idea. I want to turn it into a script, and I'll say, sure. But now I need to think of part 2 and get going. And hopefully our listeners will enjoy it as well, and it might maybe inspire a few of them to get out and get going on it as well. So, Dave, thank you very much for joining us. This has been a pleasure, and we're looking forward to some more Doctor Who RPG action soon.
Thank you very much.
Brilliant.
Thanks for joining us, Dave. Thank you, listeners. We shall see you next time. Bye for now.